The great American playwright Eugene Neal was a man of great complexity. He faced many different kinds of struggles throughout his life. He was baptized Catholic, but he had a great deal of difficulty with his Catholic faith and a great deal of difficulty believing in God. But in the midst of this lifetime crisis of faith, he always clung to the notion that there was some alternative force that would eventually bring meaning to his life. In his play, The Great God Brown, there's one great line, many great lines, but the one that stands out to me is where he writes, "Man is broken, he lives by mending, the grace of God is glue." Eugene Neal struggled his whole life to find truth. And one can tell in his writings that in the midst of his struggle to believe, he wanted to believe so badly. In 1925, he wrote a magnificent play entitled Lazarus Laughed. The play begins with Lazarus stumbling out of the tomb, blinking into the bright sunlight. After he is unbound by his loving family and friends, he begins to laugh, a soft, gentle laugh, as the script says, like a man in love with God. It's an astonishing sound. It's one full of life and hope and welcome. He then embraces Jesus and then his sisters and then his friends. He says nothing until after he's looked all around him, seeing the world, it seems, for the very first time. He's laughing slowly, softly at first, but with a very true and deep joy. And then with a light in his eyes, he utters his very first words. Yes, yes, yes. He's discovering life truly for the very first time. As he wanders back with the family to their home, one of the neighbors remarks with great wonder, "There's no longer any sorrow in his eyes. They must have forgotten the grave." And one neighbor finally musters up the courage to ask what they were all thinking. He says, "Lazarus, tell us what it's like to die. What lies on the other side of this boundary that none of us has crossed?" And it's then that Lazarus's laughter grows deep and full. And he looks at them and he says, "There is no death, really. There's only life. There is only God, and there's only incredible joy." And he laughs again. And he goes on to say to them, "Death is not the way it appears from this side. Death is not an abyss into which we go into chaos. It is rather a portal through which we move into everlasting growth and everlasting life." And he pauses for a moment. And then he continues to speak to them. And he says this, he says, "The one that meets us there is the same generosity that gave us our lives in the beginning. The one who gave us birth, not because we deserved it, but because that generous one wanted us to be, and therefore there is nothing to fear in the next realm. The grave is as empty as a doorway is empty. It is a portal through which we move into greater and finer life. Therefore," he says, "there's nothing to fear." And then he goes on to tell the people gathered why we really are even on this earth at all. He says, "Our great agenda is to learn to trust. We are put here to learn to love more fully. There's only life. There is no death," he says. And then his laughter fills the room. We gather on this All Souls Day to remember our loved ones who have gone before us. Last evening we had our annual bereavement mass, and many members of our parish family who lost family and friends this year have come up and placed their name on this tree, which you're welcome to do after Mass. There will be more leaves there. You can write the name of a loved one and place it on our tree. We're here today to remember our loved ones who have gone before us. We gather on All Souls Day to face squarely our own death with our faith and laugh as Lazarus did, realizing that the one who meets us there is the same generosity that gave us our lives in the beginning. And we gather on this All Souls Day to remind ourselves to be present to those who are grieving, to not run away from the pain of sickness and death, and to put our own fear of death into perspective so that we will be motivated to live life as fully as possible. I think O'Neill is right. We're put on this earth to love, to learn how to love more fully. Unfortunately, we all know that the fear of death overwhelms so many people. And because we are so afraid of it, we keep ourselves so busy and so distracted that so often we do fail to really experience life and live it to the best. And also, this fear of death also keeps so many from being present to others when pain and sickness and death come into their lives. I can't tell you how many people have said to me, I don't do wakes, I don't do hospitals, I don't do funerals. And when we avoid that part of life, we have to close off our emotions, and we really can't experience life in its fullest and the best of life. I know that for so many people, the difficulty of dealing with grieving people or dying people is that we don't know what to say. But what we have to realize that it's not our words that are important. It is our presence that is important, our just being there. And so often, the fewer the words, the better. Theologian John Carmody gave the Warren Lecture series a number of years ago at the University of Tulsa. At the time, he was terminally ill. So he chose as his topic a theology of illness. And as he was dying, this is how he spoke to the group gathered at the university. He said to them, when you deal with people seriously ill, either yourself or others, try to honor the eloquence of God's silence. Babble if you must, as I have babbled here, but accept every invitation to desist. If the illness is your own, go for a walk, sit in a chapel, or just hold the loved ones you most cherish. If the illness is another's, listen for the time to stay silent, as well as the time to speak. There is a time to speak, but also a time for silence. To take it to your bosom like a love. There's also a time to assault God, accuse God, but also a time to wait and to leave God free. As you move along through your own Via Crucis, let your spirit flow out of the mystery of the Stations of the Cross. Reciprocally, let their mystery flow into your spirit. Well or ill, but especially ill, you are part of something much greater. You did not make yourself, and you cannot raise yourself. But what you cannot do, God can. All things are possible with God. So let nothing disturb you, let nothing surprise you. The splendor in your death, as in your life, has yet to be revealed. In the morning, thank God for it, and in your evening say, so be it. We gather this All Souls Day to remind ourselves that we are part of something much greater. We did not make ourselves, and we cannot raise ourselves, but God can. Sheldon Van Auken was a student of the great English professor and Christian apologist C.S. Lewis. And that was in the 1950s, the early 1950s, and he recounts a story in a book that he wrote called A Severe Mercy about a luncheon that they had in an English pub before Van Auken left to come back to the United States. During that luncheon, Van Auken and C.S. Lewis talked a great deal about dying and life after death. When they had finished eating, they stood outside the pub and they talked for a few more moments, and just before parting, Lewis said to Van Auken, "I shan't say goodbye. We'll meet again." And then the great C.S. Lewis plunged into the London traffic to cross the street, and Van Auken watched his friend walk away. When Lewis got to the other side of the street, he turned around, anticipating that his friend would still be standing there. And with a huge grin on his face, Lewis shouted over all of the noise of the traffic of London, he said, "Besides, Christians never say goodbye." Eugene O'Neill struggled his whole life with his Catholicism, with his faith. He really wanted to believe in spite of his crisis. And in that wonderful play, Lazarus Laughed, he comes to the conclusion that's the foundation of our celebration today, of All Souls Day. There is no death, really. There's only life. There's only God. There's only incredible joy.